So today I'm going to talk about high risk pregnancy. So why is it important to know about high risk pregnancy? Can anybody tell me what is the importance of high risk pregnancy in obstetrics? How is it useful? This is the reason why we should know about high risk pregnancy, because it will tell you about maternal mortality rate. Yes, to reduce the mortality. Good. Because it will tell you about maternal mortality. And maternal mortality in India is how much? It is around 225. 254 is the actual maternal mortality per thousand live births. India is one of the many countries where maternal mortality is still high. And it is related, maternal mortality is mainly because of pregnancy related deaths each year. And because of this, there is so much of, and this maternal mortality will talk about the burden in the society. And this is mainly because of the complications which are arising during the pregnancy and during the postpartum period or during abortions. So how to reduce? So unless we know what is it that we want to reduce, we don't know how to reduce it. So in order to reduce the maternal mortality rate, we should know about what are the pregnancies which are at risk and how how we should take care of them. So that is the reason why you have to know about high risk pregnancies to reduce the maternal mortality rate. And according to this, by 2030, the government wants to reduce the maternal mortality rate up to less than or equal to 70 by 2030. This is the vision of the government, and it is trying to reduce up to less than 70. So what are the main causes of maternal mortality in India? And what is the definition of maternal mortality? Anyone? It is the number of deaths per thousand live births. And because of the causes of pregnancy, and maternal mortality is because of the causes of pregnancy within how many days? Within 42 days after completion of pregnancy. It has to be related to pregnancy either directly or indirectly, which is related to where the conditions are arising because of pregnancy or they are aggravated because of pregnancy. They are included under maternal mortality, and the death should be within 42 days of delivery of the baby. That is called maternal mortality. Next. So, what are the causes of maternal mortality? Main causes in India, what are the primary causes of maternal mortality in India? Mainly, hemorrhage is the most common cause here. See, hemorrhage is responsible for 27% of maternal deaths. And the second most common cause is hypertension. Hypertensive disorders which are related in pregnancy. This is responsible for 14%. Next is sepsis, and 10% are because of other causes. Indirect causes, what are the indirect causes? When do you call them as direct causes and indirect causes? I think you had a class in social obstetrics there. Madam Master talked about maternal mortality. So what are the direct causes? Direct causes are those which are arising because of pregnancy, like hemorrhage, any complications arising because of cesarean section or any operative delivery which are leading to sepsis and death. They are all direct causes. What are indirect causes? Indirect causes are those which are aggravated due to pregnancy, which are already pre-existing, but they are aggravated because of pregnancy, like anemia, any heart disease or diabetes. These are already pre-existing conditions, but they are aggravated during pregnancy. So these are all the indirect causes. Next, even abortions, they are responsible for 8% of deaths. And next is embolism. And what are the most common causes of neonatal mortality? Now tell me, what is neonatal mortality, what is perinatal mortality, and what are stillbirths? There are three terms and you should know about them. What are stillbirths, what is neonatal mortality, and what is perinatal mortality? Anyone? Stillbirths are, it is death of a fetus after 28 weeks of pregnancy. After 28 completed weeks of pregnancy, it is called stillbirth. Yes, neonatal is within 28 days of birth. Yes, 28 days after birth of the baby, if the death occurs, then it is neonatal death. Good. What is perinatal? Perinatal mortality is if the death of the baby occurs within 7 days of birth, it is called perinatal, and the baby should be weighing more than 1000 grams. That is the definition. Baby should be weighing more than 1000 grams and the death of the baby should occur within 7 days of birth. That is called perinatal mortality. Neonatal is if the death occurs within 28 days of birth. And what is stillbirth? Stillbirth is death of a baby after 28 weeks of pregnancy, irrespective of the cause or what the period later on. That is stillbirth. The baby should be, it is death of the baby after 28 completed weeks of pregnancy. So what is the most common cause for neonatal mortality? It is mostly because of preterm birth. Preterm is related to 35% of neonatal mortality and intrapartum is related to 24%. So in order to control the neonatal mortality or reduce the neonatal mortality rate, we need to identify what are all the high risk pregnancies and we need to properly monitor and take care of them. So in order to reduce the social burden of maternal mortality and neonatal mortality, this topic is very, very important. And one more thing is you will get a question either in the form of short answer or long answer from high risk pregnancies. So this topic is very, very important even from that point of view. Now, what is it that you have to know by the end of my discussion? You should know what is the definition of high risk pregnancies. You should know how to screen for high risk cases. Then you will know how to manage a high risk case and what is critical care in obstetrics and what is obstetric ICU. I'll be discussing all these things so that by the end of my session, you will know what is each one of them. Next. Now, what is the definition of high risk pregnancy? High risk pregnancy is where it is complicated by one factor or more than one factor. And it will not only affect the mother, it will affect even the fetus. Even neonatal and perinatal mortality will also come under high risk pregnancy. So, it is death of not only mother but also of the fetus because of the factors which will complicate the pregnancy. It can be either one factor or two factors, but they will affect the pregnancy outcome. Though all those pregnancies are called high risk pregnancies. So there are certain categories of pregnancies, about 20 to 30% where the mother and fetus are at increased risk. So we need to identify all those pregnancies where they are at risk and we need to take care of those mothers. So that we need to improve the obstetric results in them. And in developing countries, in developed countries, the maternal mortality has been reduced to an irreducible number where it is very less. So, in those developed countries, they will measure the maternal mortality by means of perinatal deaths and all. But in India, still it is a developing country, so still we take care of, we count in terms of maternal mortality only. Maternal mortality and perinatal mortality both are taken into consideration, but in developed countries, maternal mortality is very, very reduced, so they consider only perinatal mortality. Now, how do you screen? So what does, so any in order to reduce any disease in the society, it always starts with screening procedure. You need to identify who are at risk, and it starts with screening. So in rural areas, what do? They either ask the trained DAIs or their special nurses, ANMs, GNMs, who are in the rural area. These people are the initial persons who will screen all the maternal, all the pregnant cases. So initial screening has to be done by trained paramedical personnel. So they will divide the cases into normal cases and those which are at high risk cases. And what do they do next? For normal cases, they will continue seeing them every weekly or monthly or whatever is the protocol, they will be going and visiting the patients. In case of high risk cases, they will either refer them to the higher centers or they will send to the medical colleges or tertiary care centers, that is community health care centers, and from there, even if they are unable to manage, they will send them to tertiary care centers, and which are present in each subdivision and districts. And in case when normal cases which whom the ANMs are monitoring, if they find any new risk factors developing even in those cases, then they will send them to the referral hospitals. So this is how they screen for high risk cases. Now initial screening, what do they do at initial screening? Always any screening will start with history taking. So they need to take a history of the patient, or if the patient has any problems which are related to pregnancy or which arise during their course of, as the pregnancy progresses, if there are any new problems or new complaints that are arising, they will take a note of them. And what are the other factors that are responsible? Maternal age. What is the safe age for a normal pregnancy? Between 20 to 29 years, mother is said to be safe. Any high risk case, the age is either less than 16 or greater than 30 years are considered to be again high risk. Any pregnancy after a long period of infertility is also to be treated as high risk case, or following induction of ovulation. Pregnancy occurring after induction of ovulation is again taken as or considered as a high risk case. Now, next is the reproductive history. Any person who has a normal pregnancy, then we will consider that the woman will be delivering her second and third without any risk factors either to the mother or the baby. So if one normal delivery always tells that the second or third complications might develop, but until that we will consider that pregnancy to be normal. Next, what are the high risk cases to be noted in the reproductive history? When you take a reproductive history, you should mention all these factors. With a history of any more than 2 previous miscarriages, any induced abortions, because induced abortions carry a risk of again abortion or a preterm delivery in this pregnancy. So a care should be taken about this, keeping this in mind, and accordingly the mother has to be treated. And any previous history of any stillbirth, any neonatal death, or any birth of a baby with congenital anomaly should be asked for. Next, any history of preterm labor or any birth of IUGR baby or any macrosomic baby. You need to inquire even about this. Next is grand multiparity. What is grand multipara? I think in my last session I have told you. Anyway, when is a woman considered to be grand multipara? A woman who delivers more than 4. If the woman is pregnant for more than 4 times, that woman is considered to be a grand multipara. So even those women are at risk. And any history of previous cesarean section or any history of hysterotomy is again considered to be high risk. Next is any third stage abnormalities you need to inquire while taking history. Abnormalities like postpartum hemorrhage, because Hemorrhage is the most common and main cause for maternal mortality, accounting to 24% of maternal deaths in India. So you need to inquire about any postpartum hemorrhage in her previous pregnancy. Why? Because postpartum hemorrhage has a tendency to recur. So you need to keep that in mind while treating her in this pregnancy. So any factors like anemia or any iron deficiencies or any APO incompatibility or RH incompatibilities, they need to be corrected before the woman goes into labor in this pregnancy. And any history of RH incompatibility or ABO incompatibility with the previous infant, either dead or requiring a blood transfusion, even that has to be noted. Where is not what? Yes. Now, what are all the medical disorders which are responsible, which you need to take a note of while taking history? That is, any pulmonary diseases like tuberculosis, any renal disease like pyelonephritis, any thyroid disorders which need to be corrected, any psychiatric illness, cardiac disease, epilepsy, any hepatitis, preeclampsia, eclampsia, anemia, and infections like malaria and HIV. All these you have to inquire while taking history. Next is next is any surgical history. In surgical history, you need to inquire about any previous history of myomectomy or any complete perineal tear which has been repaired, any vesicovaginal fistula or any repair of stress incontinence. All these things will come under maternal morbidity. So you need to inquire about all these conditions because they will reduce the quality life of the mother in the postpartum period. So these have to be stressed upon in the history. And in all these conditions, even the maternal and fetal outcomes are both, they can be affected. Next is the family history. What will you inquire in the family history? You need to know about the socioeconomic status of the patient because low socioeconomic patients will have more tendency for developing anemia or either going into a preterm labor in this pregnancy or giving birth to growth retarded babies, and these are all the conditions which are because of low socioeconomic conditions. Next, in family history, you also need to inquire about if the mother or father, anyone has any diabetes, hypertension, any history of multiple pregnancies, or any birth of the baby with congenital anomalies. These are all you need to inquire in family history. Next is examination. How do you examine a woman and decide that she is a high risk case? Because you have to know which woman you need to take care of and whom you can leave for normal birth. So you will see the woman. First is always examination starts with general physical examination, and in which you need to note the height of the woman. If the height is either less than 150 centimeters, but in our country we take 145 centimeters as short stature. Such woman should be examined frequently. Next is any overweight or underweight. Normal BMI is 20 to 24. Less than that is underweight, less than 19 is underweight, and more than 29 is overweight. So those women are also at risk of developing complications during her pregnancy. Next is any high blood pressure greater than or equal to 140/90. Even those women are prone to develop go into preeclampsia or eclampsia. So they also need to be taken care of. Any anemia. Anemia might lead to PPH or any cardiac problems. Next is any cardiac or pulmonary disease and any orthopedic problems. If the woman is having, these are all you need to examine when you are strictly observing the woman. Even you need to note about any jaundice, any pathological edema, or any palpable lymph nodes anywhere. Next is you will do a pelvic examination, and if the uterine size is either disproportionately smaller, indicating it's an IUGR baby, or bigger, indicating it's a polyhydramnios or multifetal gestation, then even those you have to note down. And any genital prolapse if present, any lacerations in the cervix or any dilatation of the cervix, any associated tumors, or even assessment of pelvis if it is found to be inadequate. Those also factors which you need to duly noted. Next is if you find that in the present pregnancy, after initial visit, after taking all the history, and after during doing a thorough examination, you find that the woman is normal, then you leave the woman to continue her pregnancy, and you will ask her to come according to the protocol. You will ask the woman to come for antenatal visits, and they have to be reassessed at each antenatal visit for any abnormalities which are arising new, which might arise later in the pregnancy. You need to assess, and if you find that any new abnormalities are developing, she has to be referred to a higher referral center or a higher center, tertiary care center. Now, what are the abnormalities that arise later in the pregnancy and which you need to be vigilant about? Those are divided into pregnancy related causes and medical or surgical related causes which can be aggravated later in the pregnancy. So what are the pregnancy related causes? Preeclampsia, which will develop usually after 20 weeks of gestation. RH isoimmunization you need to look out for. Next is any kind of bleeding in the second trimester or third trimester, even that has to be kept in mind. Next is large uterus, indicating either polyhydramnios or multifetal gestation or any abruption. And lack of intrauterine growth. Intrauterine growth of the fetus, indicating she might be developing, going into preeclampsia or other causes of infection. Any post-maturity of the baby, it has to be noted down. Next, any abnormal presentations, if they are present, then even that woman has to be referred in time. And next is the twins. And next are medical and surgical related causes which are aggravated during this pregnancy, like any anemia, high fever if the woman is having, any pyelonephritis, diabetes, and history of exposure to drugs or radiation, or any other acute surgical problems which are aggravated or arising because of pregnancy. Even those have to be duly noted, and those women should be sent. And what are the complications which arise during the labor which need to be taken care of? There, you have to note down when the woman comes to you during labor whether she had any previous antenatal care or not, because any unbooked case should be treated separately, because these patients, they are more prone for anemia and postpartum hemorrhage. So that has to be kept in mind, and you need to arrange for everything before the woman goes into labor. So you have to note down whether she had any history of antenatal care. Next is you have to note down if the woman is having any anemia, if she is having high blood pressure in this pregnancy, sorry, when she comes for in the labor, any premature or prolonged rupture of membranes, any infection of the membranes like amnionitis, and how is the liquor when you do an ARM, whether it is meconium stain or normal liquor, that has to be noted. Next is abnormal presentations. If the baby is in breech or any oblique positions, that has to be noted down. Next is if the woman is in labor and if she is having still a floating head, then you need to think about, first thing is cephalopelvic disproportion. CPD should come into your mind, and you have to assess the pelvis. And next is whether it is a singleton pregnancy or a multiple pregnancy. Next is whether it is completely term pregnancy or if she has gone into preterm labor. That has to be again looked for. Next, you have to, in the fetus, you have to look for fetal heart rate. Any abnormal fetal heart rate, again you have to be vigilant about. And patients who are admitted for prolonged or obstructed labor, that has to be looked into. And next is rupture uterus. Some women might present with rupture uterus. Patients whom you have induced or either accelerated the labor with oxytocin or pitocin or misoprostol, even they have to be taken care of. So these are all the complications that will arise during the pregnancy. Now, what are the complications which are arising during labor? During the labor, complications like you need to take care of our intrapartum fetal distress. If it is arising, then she has to be immediately take up the patient for cesarean. And if the delivery is being done under general anesthesia, then you have to vigilant about the risk of asphyxia and other conditions. Next is any difficult forceps or breech delivery, failed forceps, any PPH or retained placenta. Prolonged interval from diagnosis of fetal distress to delivery is again a major problem. Next is if greater than 30 minutes have elapsed from recognition of fetal distress to delivery, then you have to note that you are increasing the maternal mortality 3 times more. So that woman should be taken care of immediately. So in case of postpartum complications, you think every labor is normal until and unless complications arise, and you can never classify the women that these might go into complications and these can deliver normally. So postpartum complications and normal labor or a normal labor is always a retrospective term. So unless the labor is completed and we have delivered a healthy mother and child, we can never say that the labor is normal. Only we can say that once it is completed. So it is always a retrospective term. So any labor which is normal till then can suddenly turn into a high risk pregnancy. Any uneventful labor might suddenly turn into an abnormal one because of conditions like any PPH because of retained placenta, or the woman might suddenly go into shock because of excessive blood loss. And PPH can be either because of retained placenta or any because of trauma. If you fail to recognize any cervical tears during pregnancy, even that might lead to traumatic PPH and the woman might go into shock. Any inversion of uterus while doing manual removal of placenta or removal of placenta, if there is any inversion of uterus or if there is any sepsis because of previously, if you don't take all the universal precautions for maintaining asepsis, then because of that you might be introducing infection and the woman might go into sepsis in the postpartum period. So even that will make a normal pregnancy into a abnormal one. So you need to keep in mind all these factors. So who are the neonates who are at high risk? Neonates, when do you call the neonates to be at high risk? When their Apgar score is less than 7 or if there are any hypoglycemia. So what is the normal blood sugar level below which you call a neonate to be hypoglycemic? Anyone? If the blood sugar levels are less than 35, you call that neonate to be hypoglycemic. And any anemia, if the birth weight is in between 2.5 kgs to 4 kgs or greater than 4 kgs, even those neonates are at high risk. Then any major congenital abnormalities, any convulsions occurring in the neonate, any infection, jaundice, any respiratory distress syndrome, persistent cyanosis, or any hemorrhagic diathesis, all these neonates are said to be at high risk. So according to WHO, What is the risk approach for maternal and child health care, and who are the women? When they come to you for first visit in the pregnancy, you need to classify them and classify them as high risk and take good care of them. They are either elderly primate who are greater than or equal to 30 years, any short stature primate less than 145 centimeters or 140, any threatened abortions or any APH, history of threatened abortions or APH in the previous pregnancies, any malpresentations in the previous pregnancies, any pre-eclampsia or eclampsia who are developing in this pregnancy or any history of them in the previous pregnancies, and any anemia in this pregnancy, elderly gland multiparas. I told you grand multipara is one who has delivered or become pregnant for more than 4 times. Next is twins, hydramnios, any previous history of stillbirth, IUD, IUDs, intrauterine death, any manual removal of placenta, prolonged pregnancies, or any history of previous cesarean or instrumental delivery, and any condition of the pregnancy associated with medical diseases. All these are at high risk, and you need to take a vigilant care about the mother in this pregnancy. So during labor, what are the conditions that might develop? Who need special care? They are premature rupture of membranes for a prolonged time, any prolonged labor, hand, feet or cord prolapse, any placenta which is retained for greater than 30 minutes, and any PPH, puerperal fever or sepsis. Third stage, that is third stage of labor is from completion of, from the delivery of the child to delivery of placenta is the third stage of labor. So what is the normal time for third stage of labor? Can anyone answer me? What is the normal time for third stage of labor? It is from delivery of birth of the child to delivery of placenta. Not only placenta, along with the afterbirths, that is the fetal membranes and all. That is called the third stage of labor. So what is the normal time for third stage of labor? Yes, it is 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the normal time both in primary as well as multigravida. 15 minutes is the normal time. So you wait until 30 minutes and more than 30 minutes has elapsed and placenta is still not delivered, you call it as retained placenta. So how do you manage these high risk cases now? First is management will start with strengthening the organization. So what I have listed is, first, how do you strengthen your organization so that you can manage high risk cases? So at the organizational level, what do? We strengthen the midwifery skills, community participation. We will strengthen our community participation, like training more number of persons, ANMs and Is, so that they can reach out to each and every pregnant woman, and developing a strong referral transport system is also needed. Next, proper training of not only the residents but also the nursing personnel and community health workers. It is one of the major thing to reduce the maternal mortality. Next is arranging for periodic seminars, refresher courses with participation of workers involved in the care of these cases. Next, concentration of cases in specialized centers for management. If you find any high risk patient in a PHC, then they have to be referred duly to higher community health care center or to a tertiary care center. Next is the government is also encouraging community participation, proper utilization of healthcare, manpower, financial resources where it is mostly needed. Next is availability of perinatal laboratory for all the necessary investigations, and availability of pediatric services for neonates, improvement of the literacy rate among the women. Not only that, even increasing the health awareness of the community and also improving the economic status. All these are at the level of organization, that is at the level of the government. All these are included in the RCH and MCH programs. RCH is reproductive child care and reproductive child health. and MCH is maternal child health care programs. So all these are included at the government level to improve the MCH care. But what is that we do when the woman at a high risk woman come to us in labor? We need to do a vigilant proper care and monitoring of the patients. And who are all the patients who need monitoring, continuous monitoring, are all these cases which are described by WHO. Any of these patients, if they come in labor, then they need a intrapartum fetal monitoring or continuous monitoring. All this like elderly primary, short stature, retina abortions or APH, malpresentations, they require continuous care and monitoring with a fetal, either with a fetal Doppler or with the CTG machine. What is the CTG? You need to monitor the fetus with CTG and continuously you go on assessing the labor, looking for any signs and symptoms of labor turning into a normal one, turning into an abnormal one. So during labor, you need to take care of all these conditions. CTG is cardiotocography, with which you will assess the fetal heart rate. Next is pre-pregnancy care. So how do you reduce? Not only you will strengthen your organization, but also even a pre-pregnancy care is needed in some cases. So what are all the cases where a pre-pregnancy care is needed? In any cases who have previous unsuccessful pregnancies, they should be investigated and seen even before the start of this conception. And what are the investigations? They are either you do a hysteroscopy or a hysterography or a laparoscopy or a transvaginal ultrasound, because we need to rule out any kind of Mullerian abnormalities. If they are present, they need to be ruled out. Next, you have to completely investigate the woman who wants to go for pregnancy. In case she is having any hypertension, any diabetes, any kidney disease, or any thyroid disorders, they have to be assessed before pregnancy. And if you find any kind of abnormality, it has to be treated, and the woman should be advised before she takes up the conception. You have to sit, counsel, and discuss with the woman what are all the conditions that are going to arise because of pregnancy. What is it that she is going to face during this pregnancy? She has to be explained. And next, any cervical tears, they have to be repaired in the non-pregnant state itself. Any STDs, they need to be treated before conception. And any serological tests for toxoplasmas, IgG, IgEM, and any antiphospholipid antibodies, they have to be done. And if you find them positive, they have to be corrected appropriately even before she embarks on this conception. And if anyone is found to be diabetic, epileptic, or any other causes, or even a normal woman can be given folic acid 4 milligrams per day, can be started 3 months before she plans her pregnancy in the pre-pregnancy state itself, and this has to be continued throughout her pregnancy. So how do you manage when a woman comes in labor? They are selected any high risk case. If she comes in labor, you have to do continuous assessment of the woman, continuous fetal monitoring. It can be done by cardiotocography or either by that, or you can remove the fetal scalp blood and check for pH. That is the monitoring which you do for the fetus. And for the woman, how do you see whether the pregnancy is progressing normally or not? What is it that we need to do? How do you chart the pregnancy? What is it called? Any pregnant woman, how do you chart her pregnancy? Yes, good. By means of partogram. So there should be a partogram for the mother to look for how the pregnancy is progressing, and fetus is monitored either with CTG or by fetal scalp blood pH. These are the methods which are used for fetal monitoring. Next, so when the woman comes, then in the pre-pregnancy, when the pregnant woman comes to you before labor, then you have to either select the cases whom you want to induce at 37 or 38 completed weeks, or you want to leave her for spontaneous labor, and some you have to go for elective cesarean sections. Then you have to plan accordingly. If you want to induce at 37 or 38 weeks, then you do a NST for the woman, admit her and induce her at 37 or 38 weeks, continuously monitor her, and if any problem arises during the pregnancy, you take her up for cesarean. Or you have to even decide if everything is going normally and there are no problems, then you can leave her for spontaneous labor. Or in case of the woman where you cannot go for normal vaginal delivery, you have to plan her for an elective cesarean section and go about that accordingly. So during when you are inducing or when you are leaving a woman for spontaneous labor, you need to monitor her closely during the labor and assess continuously for her progress of labor and any fetal hypoxia which is developing during the labor. And if you find that any abnormality in the labor or if the fetus is going into distress, you take her up for cesarean. Next, how the fetus can be assessed during labor? Fetal monitoring can be either be done with a stethoscope, fetoscope, or a Doppler, fetal Doppler. Then you need to look for any passage of meconium in the liquor. When you do an ARM, you have to assess for any passage of meconium, and examination of fetal scalp blood pH values. And delivery should be conducted. You have to remember, delivery for high risk women should always be conducted in a care center where there is neonatal care available and where expert pediatricians are present to take care of the neonate immediately after the delivery. So delivery should always take place in an institute equipped with neonatal care facilities. Okay, so we have completed with our high risk pregnancy. Now we will see what is critical care in obstetrics. And who are the women who need critical care? Any pregnant woman with multi-system pathology needs special care, and they need the technology and expertise of critical care obstetrics. So who are all these patients who need with any multi-system pathologies? And overall, how much is the percentage of the obstetric patients who are admitted in ICU? They are between 1 to 3% of the obstetric patients who need admission in ICU during the course of pregnancy. And among this 1 to 3%, what is the death rate? It is around 2 to 11% is the death rate among the patients who are admitted in ICU. And what are the main causes of death? It is either because of hemorrhage is the first and foremost cause. Second is again hypertensive disorders of pregnancy is the second leading cause of maternal mortality. So all these women, they need either cardiovascular support or a respiratory support. So they have to be admitted in ICU. Then organization of a critical care unit. How is a critical care unit organized? It is a multidisciplinary approach with physicians, anesthetists, cardiologists, intensivists, respiratory therapists, pulmonologists, pharmacists, and nurses. These are all the people who are normally you see in an ICU. But in case of obstetric ICU, apart from the above, we also need obstetricians, nurses who are trained in obstetrics, and not only that, neonatologists also are needed to take care of this critical care women. And according to ACOG, ACOG is American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists. According to this, there are 3 levels of adult critical care. The first level is the highest level of care where we admit severely ill patients and where the women are managed by multidisciplinary approach. Level 2 is intermediate care or HDU. What is HDU? It is called high dependency units. HDU are high dependency units, and these are post ICU step down units. Once the pregnant woman comes out of ICU, she can be admitted in these HDUs. This is post ICU step down units, and these units are developed within the labor ward itself. These are called HDUs. And here the care is provided either by the obstetricians or experienced and very well trained nurses. And level 3 is other intensive care units where the patients require any long-term ventilatory support. So these are the 3 levels which are recognized by ACOG. Now, what is the selection criteria? You cannot admit all the patients into ICU. So there has to be a selection criteria for admission. Who are the critically ill women who need to be admitted into ICU? Their most common indications are hemorrhage, either APH or PPH, any sepsis syndromes. If sepsis syndromes can be either because of post-abortal sepsis or any pregnancy sepsis like chorioamnionitis or pyelonephritis leading to sepsis, any case of trauma, and hypertensive disorders like severe preeclampsia, eclampsia, HELP syndrome. What is HELP syndrome? Can anyone elaborate what is HELP? So, next is cardiopulmonary diseases like any heart disease developing in the pregnancy, any thromboembolism or puerperal sepsis. All these are the cases which can be admitted in ICU. What is HELP? H stands for hemorrhage, H is hemorrhage, EL is elevated liver enzymes, P is yes hemolysis, EL is elevated liver enzymes, LP is lowered platelet count. Yes, lowered platelet count, EL is elevated liver enzymes. So when do you get a HELP syndrome? What is the condition where you find hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes and low platelet count? Where do you find this? It is a complication of which disease? Which syndrome occurring in pregnancy? You find HELP syndrome because of preeclampsia. In preeclampsia, yes, preeclampsia is the one which will lead to HELP syndrome. So HELP is one of the complications of preeclampsia. Eclampsia and HELP syndrome are the most common complications of preeclampsia. So that is the reason why a preeclampsia should never be treated normally. They have to be treated very carefully. Next is, what are all the health indicators? Where you admit a patient into obstetric ICU, you look for vital signs. Well, when the heart rate is less than 40 or greater than 150, BP less than 80 millimeters in systolic and more than greater than 120 millimeters of mercury diastolic, any mean arterial pressure less than 60, respiratory rate is very high, that is more than 35 breaths. Any sign, women showing any of these signs, they can be admitted. Next is physical findings like if you find any anuria, if the woman is in coma, any uncontrolled seizures, cardiac arrest, cyanosis, these are also can be admitted. These are also other criteria for admission into ICU. Next is laboratory values. You will check for serum sodium, potassium, partial pressure of oxygen and any pH. If they are more than this, then she can be admitted into ICU. And CT MRI showing any cerebral hemorrhage or ECG showing any heart block, any arrhythmias or congestive cardiac failure, all these patients require ICU admission. Next is, how do you monitor? Or those are all the vital signs and which we have seen. These are all the laboratory values, and by means arterial blood gas is one of the important laboratory method by which we can monitor a patient in an obstetric ICU. This is one of the important thing with which we monitor when the patient is admitted in an obstetric ICU. That is, the pH should be between, in a non-pregnant state, 7.35 to 7.43, and this is 7.4. PCO2 is also, pH is raised in pregnancy. Even the PCO2 is also, PCO2 is reduced, PO2 is again increased, and bicarbonate levels are reduced during pregnancy. So there is a base deficit of 3. If there is any deviation in these values, then the woman should be assessed and monitored accordingly. Then what regarding the decision making and patient care in ICU? How do you take a decision for a patient in ICU? all the ICU members whom I have told, who will manage the critical care unit, will sit together and they will make a plan of management and delivery. And this delivery can be, if the woman, the condition of the woman is deteriorating, then they have to plan for a delivery even before her expected date of delivery is completed. So you need to plan accordingly. And safe delivery is when the period of gestation, that is safe period, safe delivery is always once the period of gestation is either more or equal to 34 weeks. Then there are more chances of fetal survival, and any obstetrician will look for continuing a pregnancy until 34 completed weeks. So after that, you will want to take the pregnancy up to 34. After that, plan where is it that you want to deliver and what is the mode of delivery. You need to plan. And if you want to go for either a vaginal delivery or an operative delivery, it should always be done after 34 completed weeks of gestation and within the ICU setup. But cesarean delivery in ICU has problems because the space is not available. So what are all the cases where cesarean is done in the ICU itself? That is when transport of patient is not possible, or when you want to do cesarean as a perimortem procedure. Then it can be conducted in ICU itself. Otherwise, the patient is shifted and to a theater close to ICU, and there the patient will undergo a cesarean section. And not only that, when you are planning for sorry, when you are planning for a pregnancy before 34 weeks of gestation, what is the most important thing you need to do? To improve the respiratory development of the baby, you need to give her 2 doses of dexamethasone or betamethasone. And how do you look after a fetus in an ICU? You have to look for the fetal gestational age, estimate the fetal survival after the delivery, and what are all the obstetric medications that you are giving to your mother. They have to be seen because there can be any drug related side effects not only in the mother but also in the baby. Like beta agonists might cause tachycardia in a baby. Indomethacin will reduce renal perfusion or platelet dysfunctions. Beta blockers can cause IUGR, and other maternal drugs might lead to acidemia, hypoxia, alter the blood pH, or any CTG tracings. So these are all the conditions you have to keep in mind while administering any kind of drug. But in case of mother's life is in jeopardy and the drug comes under category B drug, in spite of that, if in order to save the mother's life, you have to administer the drug because mother is more important than a child. And what is the place for perimortem cesarean section in critical care obstetrics? Perimortem is when the mother is in the deathbed and you want to save the baby. There are no clear guidelines regarding perimortem cesarean section, but cesarean delivery should be considered for both maternal and fetal benefits for about 4 minutes after a pregnant woman has experienced total cardiopulmonary arrest in the 3rd trimester. In the 3rd trimester, when you want to go for a cesarean section, it has to be, the decision should be made within 4 minutes and immediately it has to be done. After the mother has gone into cardiopulmonary arrest, within 4 minutes the decision should be taken and it has to be done. And any guidelines regarding this? There are no clear guidelines regarding perimortem cesarean section. So, okay, this is the end of the session. Do you have any doubts? So, this is the reason why we need to know about high risk pregnancy. And this is a very, very important chapter, not only from an examination point of view, but also to reduce because it is an important factor for social obstetrics. So any questions you want to ask me? Anyone having any kind of doubt? Okay then. All the best for your exams and keep reading. So with that I am leaving the class. Okay. All the best for your exams.